Live from Melbourne, this is 7 Afternoon News with Mike Amor and Rebecca Maddern.
Good afternoon. First at 4, the hunt is on for a heartless driver who smashed into a cyclist at Brighton and left him lying unconscious in the gutter.
The 69-year-old is now in hospital as his family pleads for answers. Paul Dowsley has more.
Kevin Hall has been cycling for decades. At 69, it's his one great hobby, and he was out again early Saturday morning, riding his bike, about to catch up with some mates and go for a spin when he was hit by a passing car. The grandfather was left bleeding and unconscious in the gutter on St Kilda Street near Chatsworth Avenue in Brighton. That's just up from the Brighton Baths, because the car that hit him around 6 a.m. drove off. Soon after, he was found by 2 other cyclists who called 000, and Kevin was badly injured. A fractured back and eye sockets, bleeding on the brain as well. He's still in hospital. And today, his son and police are asking for help to solve this hit run.
You see his injuries, you just think, how can someone have done that to him and not stop? Watching him go for his like that, and there's people in society that, you know, won't stop for something that you've done like that. Like, I don't give a shit what you've done, if it's a stolen car or whatnot.
Not to stop and even render assistance and then establish what it hit is to us, once said callous, and really, we all have responsibility as drivers and riders, and that's a responsibility to stop and render assistance. Police
aren't yet sure what model or even colour the car was. They say there were no pieces of the vehicle left behind on the road after the collision.
We're diving headfirst into winter this afternoon as a strong cold front brings our mild autumn to an end. Blake Johnson now joins us live. Blake, we're all cold. We're seeing maximum temperatures well below average.
About 3 to 6 degrees below average for the rest of this week, but combined with some decent rain, it's been a pretty dreary end to autumn. We hit a top of just 11.7 at 11 this morning, and the city recorded about 7 millimetres of rain. It made for a damp dash for many city workers, but in the alpine regions, the weather brought smiles and dancing from ski operators. It has been a nightmare couple of years for them, thanks to COVID interruptions. But if this weather continues, Mount Buller's operators say they might open the season early. The strong cold front that's hitting us is a big one, stretching over much of South and Eastern Australia.
We've got quite a bit of cold air coming up behind it. Now, this is going to drop the current snow levels in southeast Australia from 1,100 metres to just 600 metres tomorrow. So that's going to mean some low-level snow that's well outside of the normal alpine regions.
A tornado was recorded in Adelaide. Have a look at what it's done. The northern suburbs there dealing with downed power lines and trees and up to 76 millimetres of rain. The SES in Adelaide called to more than 200 jobs, but weather warnings stretch from here right up to Queensland, involving around 10 million Australians. We're likely to get strong winds here tomorrow, possibly icy hail the entire week. So a very bleak and cold week ahead. Beck and Mike.
OK, thanks, Blake.
Masks are back on the agenda as COVID and the flu run rampant through the community. Doctors say the return of face coverings would save lives, but a new mandate looks unlikely. Jodie Lee explains.
Well, flu is spreading faster throughout Victoria than ever before. In the year to date, there have been 15,079 cases of flu recorded, and they're not evenly distributed throughout the year. Flu has spread as Victoria's weather has cooled, up from just 886 cases back in April. There have also been 6,197 Victorians who've died from COVID this calendar year, prompting a call for everyone to wear masks indoors this winter.
We've always been steadfast. We were one of the first jurisdictions, when it comes to masks, to implement them. Other jurisdictions have had masks on and off. We've been very strategic based on the health advice. We'll continue to base our analysis on the health advice.
The government is adamant any mask mandate should come from health officials, while the state opposition says Victorians should be free to live as they please.
If people want to do that, that's a preventative measure they may wish to take themselves. But as for the government making more mandatory requirements on that front, I think those times have passed.
Worryingly still, the majority of flu cases recorded in Victoria this year have been in young people, with 60% of recorded flu cases in people under the age of 24.
A distraught mother in Adelaide has been reunited with her 4-month-old baby after her car was snatched with the infant inside. The woman fought desperately in vain to stop the thief driving off in her car, which was parked outside a deli after 7:30. The vehicle was found dumped more than 2 hours later, with the child in its capsule, safe and well.
To call it despicable is an understatement. We potentially are looking at illegal use and kidnapping. A 4-month-old, you can imagine the distress that caused Bunn.
The suspect is still on the run.
1 week after a crushing election defeat, the coalition has begun the rebuilding process. Both the Liberal and National parties have elected new leadership teams. Let's go live to political reporter Rob Scott in Canberra. Good afternoon, Rob. Let's start with the Liberals. Peter Dutton is now in charge.
He certainly is, Mike. The former Defence Minister was elected unopposed this morning, with Susan Lee, the former Environment Minister, becoming his new deputy. And in his first media conference since taking over from Scott Morrison, Mr Dutton promised to turn the coalition into a force that could win back government at the next election, saying that he wants to focus on the forgotten Australians, those people in the suburbs and in the rural areas, predicting the next 3 years under Labor will be tough. Now, one of the biggest criticisms levelled against Mr Dutton during his time in politics is that he's too hard-headed and isn't compassionate enough, but he says he won't be changing.
Ultimately, I was able to cancel the visas of about just over 6,000 criminals, people who had committed sexual offences against women and children, people who had committed murder, serious criminal acts otherwise, and to deport them from our country. Now, it's pretty hard to break into a smile when you're up there making that announcement. I'm not going to change, but I want people to see the entire person that I am. And I want people to reserve and make their own judgments when they meet me.
Susan Lee says she'll make it her mission to win back women who abandoned the coalition in droves at the election.
My message to the women of Australia is, we hear you, we heard you. We're listening, we're talking, and we are determined to earn back your trust and your faith.
And we heard briefly from Scott Morrison after the new team was announced, saying he thinks they'll do an outstanding job.
On to the National Party now, Rob, and David Littleproud is the new leader.
Yes, he is, Mike, toppling Barnaby Joyce and also defeating former Veterans Affairs Minister Darren Chester, with Perrin Davey, the New South Wales Senator, now becoming his deputy. Mr Littleproud says today is the proudest moment of his professional life, pledging to make sure Australians in the bush aren't forgotten under the new Labor government, declaring the journey to returning to government for the coalition starts today.
And this is not about the National Party lurching left or lurching right. It's using common sense and being in the sensible centre. That's where you win elections, not chasing extremities. We've got to understand that we are part of a coalition and we can only win together.
Barnaby Joyce released a statement shortly after he was deposed, saying that he's not sad and that he gave every ounce of his energy to look after the people of regional Australia. He congratulated the new team and promised to be there to support them, saying he now looks forward to spending a lot more time in his electorate.
Another busy day up there. Rob Scott, live in Canberra. Thank you.
Billionaire Mike Cannon-Brookes has lobbed a bombshell into the executive ranks of energy giant AGL. After a month-long campaign, the company today dumped its planned demerger along with its chairman and chief executive. Reporter Chris Reason will have more details a little later in the program.
Footy fans have been filmed punching and kicking a man after Sunday's Collingwood and Carlton clash at the MCG. The brawl broke out in the middle of a busy street. Cassie Zerbos has more.
The confronting fight unfolded on one of Melbourne's busiest roads after the end of an AFL game last night. Phone vision has emerged of 6 men throwing a number of punches after the Collingwood and Carlton game. Traffic was forced to stop as the brawl became more violent. One victim was ganged up on after being punched to the head. The vision captured him falling to the ground as the rest of the group run over and begin kicking and stomping on him.
There was just blood everywhere and no one really knew what to do because it was just right in the middle of traffic, so everything was just stopped.
This sort of violence is so disappointing from a fan's point of view because most of us do the right thing.
This is the second violent attack after an AFL game. Last week, a Richmond supporter was assaulted with a didgeridoo after Dreamtime at the G. The 25-year-old victim was left in hospital with fractures to the skull and a broken nose. But police made an arrest last week, charging a Dandenong North man with offences, including assault with a weapon.
We would certainly say to these people, you do need to pull your heads in because you're giving all fans a bad name. You're putting other people at risk.
I think it's just people taking sports too seriously. It's just like a game and like everyone's there for the same kind of reason, like you just want to come enjoy it.
Police say they are aware of last night's fight, but the victim is still yet to come forward.
Doctors worry about a drop in vital cancer screenings. That's next on 7 News.
Also, why Melburnians are racing to embrace e-scooters.
And later, the unseen Queen, Her Majesty's home videos on show.
This is 7's Afternoon News. Electric scooter use is surging in Melbourne. More than 1 million journeys have been notched up by riders in just over 4 months across 3 inner city councils. Let's go live now to Lord Mayor Sally Capp. Sally, great to see you. It took London about a year with almost 3 times as many scooters to reach that same milestone. Why are they so popular here?
Well, Mike, it's a really astounding story, the way that we are embracing e-scooters in Melbourne. People are finding them fun. They're a fantastic, easy, efficient way to get around the city. They're replacing cars, which means that it's easing congestion, and they're great for the environment. And the good news is for people that love festivals and events, and also for providing safe places in bike lanes, all of those reasons combined means that we are taking these e-scooters up faster than any city in the world.
We were joking in the break that I'm too old to get on a scooter, but there were plenty of sceptics out there when it first started. What do you say to them now?
Well, I say jump on board, you included, Mike. I do. I regularly am on an e-scooter. I travel in my high heels still, and if I can do it, you can do it, Mike. I do fall into that age bracket, which are the lowest number of users, only about 14%. They're really being embraced by the younger crowd, but these e-scooters are driving a lot of economic activity in our city. They're bringing a lot of visitors to our city, and they're providing an alternate form of transport, which is fantastic.
I came into work today. I did see a number of abandoned scooters on the footpaths. So the company's doing enough to keep walkways clear.
Well, Mike, this is part of a trial, and it's important that we keep giving the companies feedback. They are employing between Lime and Neuron 200 people across Melbourne to be able to respond quickly to those incidents. We do ask users to do the right thing, though, and make sure that they leave them in appropriate places and upright. But overall, the usage has been fantastic. Not many have been thrown into the Yarra, Mike, so we see a huge improvement in behaviours compared to the O-bikes we had earlier.
You touched on it before, Sally. How much of a dent do you think e-scooters are making into city congestion?
Well, the users, so of the 1 million rides so far, 45% of those have replaced a car trip. So that's 450,000 trips done around the city and between the City of Melbourne, Port Phillip and Yarra that have replaced a car, and that means fantastic things for congestion on our roads.
Well, thanks for your vote of confidence on my scooter riding ability. Lord Mayor Sally Capp, thank you.
Come on, Mike. You too, Beck.
OK, I'll try.
Thanks, Sally.
Thanks, Sally. A woman has been killed when her four-wheel drive crashed and rolled southwest of Melbourne early this morning. The driver lost control at an intersection in Lara. She died at the scene while a male passenger was taken to hospital with critical injuries. The road toll stands at 100. That's 13 more than the same time last year.
New national data shows young women are falling behind when it comes to cervical cancer screening. The report found only 20% of women who were invited to screen in 2020 got tested. This fell to just 12% among those aged 25 to 29.
I think it's partly the effect of the pandemic and partly because of our switch from 2-yearly to 5-yearly screening back in 2018. The people that were due in 2020 are more likely to be overdue and face challenges with screening.
Cervical cancer is one of the most common cancers in the world, killing more than 340,000 women globally each year.
Sport is coming up after the break, including details on Buddy's trip to the tribunal.
Also, the Aussie cyclist who's created history on the world stage.
And later, drones dazzle in a vivid display over Sydney Harbour.
You're watching 7 News across Victoria and Tasmania.
Malthouse on a mission.
Double up, take your numbers.
The coaching legend answers a footy SOS.
It's massive for us. We're struggling at the moment.
To save a club fighting for survival.
I'm really concerned we're going to lose some really great talent.
Only on 7 News at 6.
Melbourne, you're watching 7's afternoon news. Just 10 degrees outside right now. Becca's wrapped about it. Jane Bunn will be here with the forecast later in the hour.
Very cold. My hands are cold. Abbey Gelmi is here with Sport Now. Abbey, the Swans are rolling the dice at the tribunal.
They certainly are, Beck, and it's ahead of a blockbuster against the D's on Saturday night. Sydney are appealing Buddy Franklin's one-game suspension he received for striking former Richmond captain Trent Cotchin. The match review officer graded the incident as intentional, low impact and high contact. The Swans are likely to argue that the contact was careless instead of intentional, which will result in just a fine. Bombers coach Ben Rutten has played down an animated exchange between Darcy Parish and captain Dyson Heppel. The midfielder confronted his skipper at quarter time after Essendon managed just 6 behinds in the opening term.
There's enough level of relationship, trust, connection there that it's would be really confident it's done in the right way, and it's all done about how we can get better.
And the Bombers have a bye this weekend. Jai Hindley has become Australia's first winner of the Giro d'Italia. The 26-year-old held a 1 minute and 25-second lead before the final 17k time trial in Verona and only dropped 7 seconds. It's the reverse of a result from 2 years ago over Olympic gold medalist Richard Carapaz.
It's a beautiful feeling, really. A lot of emotions out there today. Really proud to be Australian and, yeah, happy to take this one home.
Good on him. Hindley is only the second Australian to win a Grand Tour after Cadel Evans' Tour de France win in 2011. Novak Djokovic and Rafael Nadal will go head-to-head in the quarterfinals of the French Open. Djokovic cruised past 15-seed Diego Schwartzman, while 13-time champion Nadal dug deep in an epic against Felix Auger-Aliassime.
Sensational!
Nadal!
The type of point only Rafael Nadal can win.
It's only the third time that Nadal's been taken to 5 sets at Roland Garros. It was a drama-filled Monaco Grand Prix as heavy downpour caused an hour delay. Mick Schumacher somehow avoided harm despite a huge crash. Sergio Perez crossing the line first ahead of Ferrari's Carlos Sainz and Red Bull teammate Max Verstappen. Daniel Ricciardo finishing in 13th. From next week to next March, it's non-stop cricket for Australia's men's and women's teams. Cricket Australia has released the home summer schedule. Starting in late August, it will include 6 white ball series, a T20 World Cup, Test series against West Indies and South Africa. And that's just the men. The women host Pakistan for T20s and one-dayers. In the Indian Premier League, 105,000 people crammed in to watch Matthew Wade's Jugat Titans beat Rajasthan Royals in the final. And with women's cricket, we know they're going to be at the Com Games as well. So very busy. And, of course, there'll be more sport at 6.
Can't wait for summer and the cricket. Thank you, Abbey. The biggest light show in the Southern Hemisphere has dazzled crowds in Sydney. 600 drones lit up the night sky as part of the Vivid event. The festival runs for 3 weeks and the government is allowing pubs and restaurants to stay open until midnight in the hope of luring record crowds.
Tributes for a grandmother murdered in her Bacchusmarsh home. That's coming up next on 7 News.
Also, the renewed COVID threat. We'll ask an expert how we can protect ourselves in winter.
And a huge milestone for a Melbourne baby born in war-torn Ukraine.
We'll be back in just a couple of minutes.
Live from Melbourne, this is 7 Afternoon News with Mike Amor and Rebecca Maddern.
COVID is now a leading cause of death in Australia, with a warning an alarming number of people are falling victim to the disease. It's prompted fresh calls to mask up as we head into winter to reduce the strain on the state's health system and save lives. For more on this, let's bring in Victoria's AMA President, Dr Roderick McRae. Doctor, good afternoon. Now, would you support the return of masks?
Look, I've encouraged the voluntary use of masks for several months now. It's a very simple, non-pharmacological mechanism of just reducing the transmission of not one but two highly infectious respiratory viruses that are really, really distressing our ability to look after people in the public health system.
OK, so that's masks. Is there anything else we should be doing to stop the spread of COVID as we head into winter?
Yes, it's a nasty disease and winter appears to have started a few hours ago. All of the simple mechanisms, we've been hearing about them for about 2 years. It's minimise your movement because that's how the virus transmits. Do simple things, sneeze correctly, cough into your sleeve or your lapel jacket, the mask wearing, and get vaccinated. All of these things do so much for each of us as an individual to help ameliorate the stresses on the healthcare system.
We're hearing about the numbers of deaths every day, but who is actually dying? Is it the elderly or is it the young too? What's the spread?
It's indeed a remarkable spread, so basically all ages from start to finish. We also have the influenza A virus zipping around Melbourne as well, and that's predominantly affecting the younger age groups, so neonates, toddlers, preschoolers, and of course it's just going around classrooms and the staff associated there. There's a higher number of elderly patients succumbing as a consequence of COVID-19 infection, but it's not an absolute rule. And of course, if we were to have an elite athlete die of COVID-19 in their 20s or 30s, we'd hear all about it.
What about those who were double vaxxed but not boosted? How at risk are they now?
Well, look, the clear medical advice is that they're highly at risk. So we use this language that says fully vaccinated, but that was long ago and against different variants. Through calendar 2022, that's the last 5 months, it's predominantly the Omicron variant. And despite people reporting that it doesn't give such a severe illness, it's actually killed more Victorians and more Australians in this 5 months than in the preceding 2 years. People really need to be alert to the fact that the virus is not away, has not gone anywhere, absolutely stressing the presentations of every part of our healthcare system, from the paramedics on the road, nurses and midwives and colleagues in the emergency department. And bear in mind, it's mighty cold outside, and if you go to an emergency department, you may well be deposited in a tent outside.
OK. Dr Roderick McRae, will leave it there this afternoon. Thank you so much for your time.
A 20-year-old man has been charged with murder after a grandmother was found dead at a home in Darley. Shirley Kidd has been remembered as a hero with a heart of gold who was devoted to her grandchildren and 3 adult children. Mrs Kidd was found with critical injuries at her house near Bacchus Marsh on Saturday night and couldn't be saved. Police have not confirmed her relationship to the man charged, but say the pair was known to each other.
The Chris Dawson murder trial has heard from the accused man himself via a police interview recorded 9 years after his wife Lynette disappeared. The former teacher denied telling his new girlfriend he'd hired a hitman, as Leonie Ryan reports.
Good afternoon. Well, this police interview was conducted and recorded in 1991 when police clearly believed there may be reason to treat Lynette Dawson's disappearance as possibly more than just a missing persons case.
I presume we're going to be back in a couple of days' time, so I thought, maybe at the time it was easier just to sort of say that she'd be sick or she wasn't well for a couple of days.
Lynette Dawson disappeared in 1982. The prosecution says it's because her husband wanted to begin another relationship with the babysitter he had moved into the couple's Bayview home on Sydney's Northern Beaches. The babysitter, whom he later married and divorced, gave evidence during this trial that Dawson had driven her to a place in Western Sydney in the hope of finding a hitman to kill his wife.
What do you have to say about that allegation? Complete fabrication.
We've heard more allegations of alleged domestic violence, that Lynette may have gone through. One former work colleague says she bumped into the couple at a shopping mall, and when Lynette removed her sunglasses, she had a black eye and that bruising went over the bridge of her nose. Now, Chris Dawson denies all the allegations made against him, saying that his wife left on her own accord, that he actually received a number of phone calls from her telling him she was okay and not to worry.
A miracle milestone has been reached by a baby born to a Melbourne couple via surrogate in Ukraine. Little Elba was born prematurely at 29 weeks, days before war broke out. Parents Kev and Jess made a mercy dash and were with her as she was flown to a hospital in London. After several surgeries, Elba is now well enough to leave hospital but will stay in the UK until she's strong enough to return here to Melbourne.
Urgent action has been demanded over the treatment of Liverpool Football Club fans attending the Champions League final in Paris. Thousands of ticket holders were stuck outside for hours with security using tear gas and pepper spray. Europe Bureau Chief Hugh Whitfeld reports.
Lots of questions remain about how fans ended up in this situation. Thousands trying to enter the Stade de France in Paris, but caught up in a crowd crush, blocked by police using pepper spray and tear gas, including on children. The game itself was delayed about an hour, and 174 people were injured, 68 were arrested. The French and UEFA, the football governing body in Europe, say fans were trying to enter with fake or scam tickets, but there is now evidence that the turnstiles were simply not working. Ultimately, thousands of Liverpool fans couldn't get in, and many of them had to go back to their hotels to watch the match on TVs. There are now calls for the British and French governments to get together to look into what has happened here and for UEFA to investigate as well. Concerning too, considering that Paris is meant to be hosting the Rugby World Cup final next year and the Olympics the year after.
Treat football fans like they did, like absolute animals. The blame lies fully with UEFA and the French authorities, and that's why, again, I'll be calling for the full investigation to make sure we get to the truth.
Despite losing the Champions League final to Real Madrid, Reds fans have welcomed home their heroes to Merseyside with a big street party in Liverpool in the last couple of hours. There is plenty to celebrate for the club, winning the FA and the League Cups this year, so at least 2 trophies to put into the cabinet. A big night ahead in Liverpool.
The new Top Gun movie blitzes the box office. Details are next.
Also, the American president grieves with families in Texas.
And why classic books may not be good for our kids.
You're watching 7 News. Stay with us.
Some of Australia's best-loved books have been criticised for being outdated and not culturally diverse. It's prompted calls for teachers to expand their reading material in the classroom. For more, let's bring in lead author at Edith Cowan University, Helen Adam. Helen, great to see you. Thank you very much for joining us. Why shouldn't we rely on these books anymore?
I think that's the key. It's don't rely on them solely. These books are classic books, and they're classic for a reason. But, you know, a lot of them are the ones that were favourites for our childhood or my children's childhood, and there are some brilliant, fantastic contemporary books that we should be introducing to children to today. So it's about keep the classics for sure, but bring in some more up-to-date books that reflect today's society for today's children.
It's a balance, isn't it? Critics might say that this is pushing political correctness too far. How would you respond to that?
Look, I'd say, well, do you know, we don't drive around in classic cars every day. We don't wear the same clothes that we wore 20, 30 years ago. Why are we expecting children or saying that children should only read the books that were around 20, 30, 40 years ago? I'm not saying get rid of them by any means. Then, you know, as I said, they're classic for a reason. But let's bring in, you know, some of the amazing authors and contemporary books that we have today and just diversify your book collection. Just read a greater variety of books.
What sort of titles would you like to see more of?
Oh, look, there's some fantastic books. Even some of those authors on that list, for example, some of the more recent books by Mem Fox, for example, a really recent one, A Tiny Star, absolutely beautiful book, illustrated by another fantastic Australian author-writer, Freya Blackwood. There's Scott Stewart's book, My Shadow is Pink, and his sequel, My Shadow is Purple. Maxine Beneba Clark, Patchwork Bike. You know, there's just so many fantastic up-to-date books, so that children deserve the same chances that we had or our children had to fall in love with, these classic books. Let children today fall in love with new classic books that reflect the world that they're growing up in.
Helen, before we let you go, you mentioned that we should still include these classic books, but if they're not appropriate, how do you address that with the children when you're reading them?
Look, I think one of the best things about reading with children, it's not just reading, it's talking with children. And so when you talk with children and take the lead from the kids, let them talk or ask them questions that you don't know the answers to, that gets them talking to you about their thoughts. And then if there is some troubling content, you can have those conversations. And, we underestimate children far more than we overestimate them. So give them a chance to speak and talk about the book. And, the added benefit of that is just the conversations between adults and children. And, you can't put a price on that.
Well, this is a great conversation too. Really appreciate your time, Helen. Adam, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much for having me. Bye-bye.
Ukraine's president has visited troops on the country's battered eastern front line, thanking soldiers as the Russian onslaught continues. It was Volodymyr Zelensky's first official trip outside the Kyiv region since the invasion began in February. During a televised address to the nation, he said all infrastructure in a key city had been destroyed by Russian forces.
Dozens of people have been killed as landslides and flooding grip parts of Brazil. Armed forces are now helping to conduct search and rescue missions. At least 44 people have been killed and thousands are homeless. It's the region's fourth major flooding event in 5 months.
Tom Cruise is celebrating a career milestone today. His latest movie, Top Gun: Maverick, has taken a whopping $124 million during its opening weekend in the US, earning the actor his highest domestic debut. The film is also performing well outside the US, raking in $10 million in Australia.
Joe Biden has encountered cries of "we need help" as he visited the scene of the Texas school shooting. The President and First Lady met families of the 19 children and 2 teachers who were killed. US correspondent David Woywood is there.
The broken hearts of this tiny Texan town today soothed somewhat with the visit from the US President. Joe Biden and the First Lady, Dr. Jill Biden, today welcomed with open arms. Laying flowers in a sombre moment of reflection at the scene of America's latest deadly shame. Biden wiping away a tear on the way to a Sunday church service, mixing with parishioners and then family members of victims. The Consoler-in-Chief holding a private audience with those bearing the weight of this town's sorrow. Has it broken this town?
I think it has. It's really broken Uvalde.
Our classrooms are not safe, that it can happen at any moment.
Many here demanding change. Protesters soon rounding on the President to do something. His response: the first couple's visit coinciding with the launch of a Department of Justice investigation into the police mishandling of this active shooter situation. The glaring question, why it took so long to take out this teen gunman, and it's a question this town is demanding an answer to.
Corporate history made as a billionaire climate activist forces an energy giant's backflip. Those details next.
Also, a spectacular fail brings an inventor back down to earth.
We are back after this break with Peter Mitchell and Jane Bunn's weather forecast.
Rare, unseen footage from the Queen's own archive is set to be aired in a BBC documentary. It's narrated by Her Majesty herself and features images never previously seen of a then Princess Elizabeth before she became the monarch.
I and all my family have always felt that one of our most important duties is to express in our visits overseas the goodwill of our country towards friends abroad, near and far.
Filmmakers listened to more than 300 of the Queen's speeches across 80 years to make the 75-minute documentary.
AGL's grand plan to split its power generation and retail business is today in tatters. The strategy was shot down after intense opposition from a tech billionaire, and the jobs of several top executives have gone too. Chris Reason explains.
Good afternoon. Yes, Australia's biggest energy company, AGL, is in crisis this afternoon after what's been one of the most extraordinary events in corporate history, with another win for the green movement and an unknown outcome for AGL customers. AGL has been positioning itself to carve its retail arm off from its high-polluting coal and gas-fired power stations. AGL is Australia's biggest source of greenhouse gas emissions, and it had proposed the demerger as a way to address the future. But Green campaigners led by the company's biggest shareholder and one of the nation's richest men, Mike Cannon-Brookes, vowed to block that move, saying it would destroy shareholder value and delay the closure of those power plants. And his very high-profile campaign won. In a stunning capitulation, the 180-year-old company announced the demerger was off today. The board believes this path is no longer available, it said in a statement, and they're reviewing the company's strategic direction. No review, though, for the CEO, Graham Hunt, and Chairman Peter Botten, both gone, along with two other board members. Cannon-Brookes tweeting this morning, "Wow, a huge day for Australia. Had to sit down and take it in."
We've said since the start we're here because we believe in the opportunities for AGL as a combined entity are greater than that as a demerged entity. So obviously very happy with the board's announcement today.
For AGL customers, though, some uncertainty. One analyst we've spoken to says this will likely mean an increase in power prices in the short term as AGL transitions to the promised cheaper power of clean energy in the long term. But either way, after the political wins of the Greens and the Teals in the federal election, industry observers are calling this another Green victory and say it puts all ASX companies on notice.
Let's take a quick look at Melbourne's roads right now.
Good afternoon, I'm Hayley Steele in the Pow Traffic Centre. We've got heavy delays this afternoon for the Ring Road travelling Greensboro bound, all the way from the Calder Freeway through to Sydney Road due to a collision. It is a bit wet on the roads as well. Have you claimed your completely free PowerPal? Time is running out. To claim your free energy monitor at PowerPal, find your power hogs for free with PowerPal. Simply Google PowerPal. Have a great night.
The French inventor of a homemade jetpack has had a spectacular fail when his device malfunctioned and he spiralled into a lake. Frankie Zapata was injured and is recovering in hospital. He made headlines when he crossed the English Channel with his backpack 3 years ago.
Jane Bunn joins us as we shiver through the coldest day of the year so far. And Jane, it sounds like the chill is here to stay. Beck's not happy about it.
No, indeed, Mike and Beck. Below average temperatures are set to remain with us for the rest of the week. Here's why. Large areas of rain are circling around a low. The rain is heaviest in northern Victoria today. There is some in the south, but it's not quite reaching the coast. So the coast generally has the highest temperatures, but you certainly couldn't call any of this warm. The city's top was only 11.7. Since 11:30 this morning, it's been only 10 degrees. And there is more chill to come. Our maximum tomorrow could be even lower. The rain spread through northern suburbs late this morning, continues this afternoon, just creeping into the south, but tending mostly dry towards the coast. It's not often that you see the colder temperatures in our northern suburbs, but the rain totals really show what a different day it has been from north through to south. There is nothing in the gauge from south of Moorabbin. Here is the deep low that is driving our weather. It's fed by moisture from the Indian Ocean. We've got fronts and troughs attached to that, with a conveyor belt of troughs to follow over the next 2 days. The next high comes in on Thursday. That will give us a break. So the rain continues to wrap around the low, but once that all moves out to sea, it is an even colder blast coming up from the south, mainly affecting the southwest, western Gippsland and up into the northeast. The coldest air arrives tomorrow morning. Yes, it will turn even more bitter. With this, we have the risk of thunderstorms that bring damaging winds. Also cold enough for wintry hail, those tiny balls of ice. The Alps are seeing 20 to 50 centimetres of snow by Thursday, and it should fall down to around 600 metres at its lowest point early on Wednesday. Around the nation tomorrow, strong winds at the east coast and across the southeast as well. This low certainly has far-reaching effects. To Victoria, widespread showers from the southwest up into the northeast. There's less for the rest. The risk of storms with damaging winds. We've got strong and gusty winds anyway. Wintry hail in those showers as snow lowers on the hills. So in Melbourne, the top tomorrow, it's just 11. We're looking at lots of showers in eastern suburbs. Very wet there, but not much for the west. Gusty winds, we've got wintry hail, and there is the risk of a thunderstorm. That's the latest. I'll have more at 6.
OK, thanks, Jane.
Thank you. All right, let's check in with Peter Mitchell, who's getting ready for 7 News at 6.
Thanks, Mike and Beck. Coming up at 6, we'll have the latest on the hunt for a driver who hit a cyclist at Brighton and didn't bother to stop. Also, a couple's anger as their pet dog is stolen in the dead of night, one of several recent dog thefts in Cranbourne.
When they came here, they knew exactly what they were doing because it happened so quick.
Good news for drivers in Melbourne's southeast. We have exclusive details on the latest Monash upgrade. And Mick Malthouse heads to a country town to help a local footy team in dire straits.
Having Mick down here, everyone's been buzzing all week.
All those stories and more coming up at 6. Beck and Mike.
Good luck to them. Thanks, Mitch. And that's all from Melbourne's afternoon news. Thanks for joining us.
For now, from the 7 News team, take care.